Welcome to Learning Unity with the 3D Game Kit. In this lesson, we're adding info and text displays to our level. These are essential for guiding players, delivering important hints, and enhancing storytelling. We'll walk through setting up info zones, adding dialogue canvases, and controlling when and how text appears on screen. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a solid understanding of how to integrate interactive text into your game, so let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, the first thing we want to do is create some sort of organization in our hierarchy for these guys. We're already getting a lot going on in here, but let's go ahead and add in a bit more. So what we're going to want to do is create an empty object named info zones. I'll just do it like I did before, create empty, add in a few dashes, add in info zones here, and a few more dashes. So that way we have a category separated out. Now, if we navigate into our prefabs here under interactables, you're going to see that we have this one in here called info zones, and that's going to be what we need to utilize here. So we can go ahead and drag and drop this under our outliner under info zones, just like so, and that will go ahead and give us this gizmo. Now, if you go ahead and take a look at this, this is what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and zero out my info zones here, the actual hierarchy group it's parented under. That way it's at the center of the world, but you can see what it is essentially set up as is a sphere with an interact on trigger script. So we need to do something here to make it work, and what we need to do is we need to add a dialogue canvas, which is under our UI prefab. So if we go under prefabs, we should be able to find one here under UI prefabs, and the one we're looking for is dialogue canvas. So we can go ahead and drag this underneath info zones now, so that way it is nested under this category. And what canvas is a UI element that'll pop up on screen. So user interface is actually handled sort of off screen in a separate two-dimensional space, and that's what a canvas is going to give us access to. So this has all the code and logic to push info to the player. We don't need to do anything to this. We just need to go ahead and set up functionality. So it's kind of like how our sandbox came with all this stuff preloaded. The dialogue canvas works the same way. So let's come back to this info zone here. And what we need to play around with this is we're going to need to play around with how we interact. So you'll see we have this interact on trigger script. Now, what interact on trigger means is that when something comes in contact with the trigger attached to the script. So what is the trigger? It is the collider. And we can actually see that that's the big green ball here. So it's set to the player. You'll see right here it's player. So that means when the player collider triggers this collider, we're going to do something. So you'll see we have an option at the top here. It says on enter. What on enter means is when the player's box collider collides with this one's collider, that's when it enters. So when it enters this volume, we're going to do something. And on exit is what happens when you leave the volume. So we need to make some rules here. What we can do is we can drag the dialogue canvas over into the none slot. So that's this slot right here underneath runtime only. And we can take that dialogue canvas and just whoop, bring it right here into the slot. That will allow us to access the functionality here, and we can alter things. So now that we have this input in here, under no function, we can go to dialogue canvas controller, and we can select this option, activate canvas with text string. And what that will do is it will allow us to put in information. We can then type what we want to say into this info box. So in this instance, maybe we'll make this about her crashing. You know, you can probably come up with a more creative dialogue. We'll just put, what is this place? Question mark. So that's going to give us the information there. Then on exit, we can set it to do what we want. For example, we could set it to do something like deactivate with delay, and this will make it so when we step out, it goes away. We could also add a plus to add in another message. So for example, we have what is this place? We could add another plus, you know, to add more dialogue or something else. So on exit, let's go ahead and drag in the dialogue canvas. Under no function, you can go to dialogue canvas control, and you can see deactivate canvas with delay as an option here. That's a float. So right now it's set to 1. That's probably going to be 1 second. Now, I want to set up a context here, that kind of makes sense. So let's take our character, Ellen, and let's move her so she's not in the canvas to begin with. And let's place her maybe, dropping into the level on top of here on our hazard, which might be a pain in the butt for me because if you've watched the previous section of the series, I'm not very great at jumping games, and that's what we got on our hands here. I also might need to adjust these. Right now I can get that way, but I don't know if I can get that way, so I might need to just kind of tilt that, make it a little bit easier here. And then on my info zone here, I'm going to make it so it kind of encompasses any of the area this character could enter. And what I'm looking at is that green bauble, that's the collider. Okay. Now, since I moved that, let me go ahead and refactor my nav mesh again real quick. So that is under our enemies here, nav mesh, and we're just going to bake that and save. And let's hit play and see if our dialogue works. All right, so I'm in the scene, I jump, and there it is. What is this place? And if I leave the area, it should deactivate after a second. If I come back to the area, though, you can see, it's still there. So we might actually want to find a way to get rid of that, but you can see that we now have dialogue popping up for the purpose of level interaction, which is pretty cool. So in the info zone here, what could I do here? Well, you can actually come in here to game object, and we could select to set the active state. You'll see it's select active bowl. And if I uncheck this, that should deactivate this entire game object, but I need to do it into the info zone. So I'm going to drag the info zone into here. And what that will do is it will actually destroy this object, so it only happens once. So let me hit play and see if that's true for this one or not. So now I should jump into it. We get the what is this place? And if I leave this area, well, looks like nothing's happening. So it looks like we actually need to change that. We might need to do more than one functionality. All right. So, for example, we could bring in the dialogue with canvas. We could come in here to our dialogue with canvas, deactivate with delay 1. Then we could add an input here, drag in the info zone, and we could go to the game object function, set active bowl, and deactivate it. So let's see if that works. In theory, it should, but you never know with games until you hit the play button. So now if I run this way, we see what is this place. Those destroy. If I come back now, it shouldn't be activating. And you can see we've successfully deactivated that, so it only says it once. Okay, so we do need to play around with some stuff if we want to make that work. But there you go. There is a bit of an info zone that we can add to our scene to kind of add in some story. Now we can actually add in a lot of these. I'm going to add in info zone 1 here, so that way it's kind of all set up. And I could duplicate this, Control D. Then we could move it, maybe over to this boss room and scale it up to be a bit larger so that it goes outside the area. And we could add in a comment here like, wow, that thing looks mean. So that way they know it's a boss. Now we have a bit of a interesting issue here. But it's not really an issue, because if you look at this, when I duplicated this, you'll see that it has infozone 01 here. And what that indicates is that it input itself into this destruction script. So this one should destroy itself as well when we leave this volume. Now, the one downside, though, is that, this volume is the whole battlefield. So we never really deactivate. Right? So we could also do something kind of interesting, like, for example, on enters, we could add an on enters here. We could go to the dialogue control, and we could deactivate canvas with delay on enter. And then that way it's deactivated on exit, it's deactivated on enter. But, if you enter within a certain amount of time, it's not going to go away. So I'll go ahead and set that to 3, maybe. So let's hit play. And what we should see is when we're inside of it, it should stay active for like 3 minutes. And then when we exit it, it should go away forever, potentially. But we could play around with those rules to find what works for us. So let me come into here. Wow, that thing looks mean. And you can see it's no longer there. And now if I leave, you'll see it should deactivate. Now, why did I set that deactivate? It's so if I go and fight it, it's not on screen the whole time. So let's take a look at the scenario where I didn't do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this without this. Let me go ahead and just minus this to get rid of it. And let's hit play. So now when I go over there, it should be stuck on screen the entire time I'm fighting the boss. So we have, what is this place? Wow, that thing looks mean. Oh, it looks like it actually disappeared, so that's good. So maybe we don't need to worry about that. Now, you can use this for the purpose of tutorials. So I'm going to grab the info zone 2 again here. We can bring these over here. Put those, near these boxes. I bet I could break those boxes. I wonder what is behind them. I think I see something. Now, you can also set this up to be multiple strings, right? So, for example, I could cut that I wonder what's behind them. I could bring this down here, and I could paste that there. So it'll play that series, and we should be able to see that. And then we could come in here, and we can, maybe bring another field over here, and I don't know, maybe put, wonder if that can heal me. Really dumb dialogue. But you can see now we're adding these little breadcrumbs where all of a sudden our game has some narrative, some direction, some story to it for the character. So we got our intro. What is this place? We can see wow, that looks mean. I wonder what's behind them. So you can see there was an issue there where that one popped up. We might need to alter that. So we do have our 2 strings. The first one popped up and then not the next. So we might have to explore, how these interact. We might have to add like a pause, between. So I could add a plus here. And we could do like a deactivate canvas with delay float, maybe do 1 second, and you can change the order here. And let's see if that works. I have no idea if it will. I'm going to be completely honest. I've just worked with a lot of game stuff before. I haven't really looked into this dialogue system too much in this kit. But let's just see what happens now. Okay. So we'll have to make that, maybe 1. I don't know how it manages it as like a long thing, but you're not always going to get what you want for free, right? So there we go. Let's just see how it looks longer and see if it fulfills the needs of our tutorial here. Our player tutorial. I bet I could break those boxes. I wonder what's behind them. I think I see something. Wonder if that can heal me. Can't, because I haven't taken damage. Okay, cool. So you can see all sorts of little dialogue interactions there, adding a little bit of depth and story to our game. We have them all loaded in here under our info zone, so we can continue doing the story. All right, so now that we've taken a look at adding these to the scene, go ahead and add some form of communication to your level. Add some story information, maybe clues to a puzzle. You could make the character upset they've crashed on a planet. Maybe you could make them motivating themselves, encouraging themselves. All sorts of different things. You could be creative with it. All right. So that's going to wrap up this lesson in Unity with 3D Game Kit. Now that you know how to use these info zones to create interactive text displays for your game, these tools are going to be great for creating tutorials like I did in this demo, storytelling, adding player guidance. So be sure to experiment with different placement and messaging and keep practicing. I'll see you in the next video as we continue to build our level.